Let's dive into the history of how Monaco became the wealthy country that it is today. Monaco is the second smallest country in Europe, and yet it's one of the wealthiest and most expensive in the world. But that wasn't always the case. Legend has it that during the Middle Ages, a Grimaldi conquered Monaco by entering dressed as a monk, hiding a sword beneath his robe. Since then, Monaco has been ruled by the Grimaldis with just a small pause during the French Revolution. What's fascinating about the Grimaldis is that they really held on to their power. They created strategic alliances and they married the right people. So over the centuries, they held on to the territory. This brings us to 1848, when two towns in Monaco seceded. That meant a loss of 80% of their territory and also a big cut in tax revenues. What remained was a tiny piece of land. It was hard to reach, it attracted barely any visitors, and it was really struggling to survive. The remaining population was small, and it was growing increasingly tired of supporting the monarchy. So in 1856, Charles III ascends the throne, and he knows that things must change. At the time, across Europe, casino spa resorts were booming. They attracted all kinds of wealthy visitors, aristocrats, and elites. So Charles decided to take advantage of this trend. The first casino opened shortly after at Villa Bellevue, but it was a failure. While the idea might have been good, Monaco wasn't ready. The country was very isolated at the time. It didn't have good transport links, and really the only way in was an old steamship service. But Charles didn't give up on the idea. During the next few years, the casino changed ownerships and locations, and eventually it started to work out. In 1863, Charles founded the Société de Bains de Mer, or SBM, which today owns most of Monaco's casino and luxury hotels. He granted an exclusive 50-year gambling concession to François Blanc, who in return would pay an annual fee and a share of the profits to the monarchy. At the same time, other changes were happening. France decided to invest into a new road that would link it to Italy, and it was decided that the road would go through Monaco, which meant bringing people in. Also, the country invested in new luxury hotels like Hôtel de Paris, that has been there since 1864. This laid the foundation of the modern Monte Carlo, which, by the way, takes its name from Prince Charles. And really the results were staggering, so much so that only a few years later, in 1869, Monaco abolished income taxes for its own residents, and it relied only on revenue from visitors. And by the way, to protect its own citizens from financial losses, the population of Monaco is not allowed to access their own casinos. So from then until World War II, Monaco was transforming, and it was sort of becoming an amusement park for wealthy adults. It had everything you could wish for at the time. It opened theaters, operas, and a golf course. It also organized sailing competitions, automobile races, seaplane races, and eventually the Monaco Grand Prix. So in just around 50 years, it went from the first failed casino to making millions in profits. And the clientele reflected that. Arthur the Rothschild was spotted famously always betting on number 17. The Russian royalty also was there, like the Grand Duke Nicholas, his brother Michael, and their mother. And Winston Churchill, who not only loved to play the roulette, but after retiring from politics, he traveled to Monaco to escape the British weather. Soon after, World War I broke out in Europe, and Monaco maintained its neutrality, and all things considered, it wasn't affected too badly. However, World War II was different. While still proclaiming its neutrality, Monaco was first occupied by the Italians. The Italians were quite relaxed with the rules, so they allowed the businesses to remain open. But then came the Germans, and the Germans weren't as relaxed. In 1944, they banned gambling, imposed an 8 p.m. curfew, expelled all visitors and non-citizens, and even the wealthy Monaco had to rely on food rationing. After the war ended, all the casinos reopened, but Europe was struggling, the economy was really bad, and it was really a time of rebuilding rather than gambling. Monaco's economy heavily relied on tourists, and at the time there were hardly any. So, with very few alternatives, the principality survived mainly through a state-controlled tobacco monopoly and postage stamps. In 1949, Prince Rainier III ascended the throne, and he took over a country whose business model was no longer working. The SBM was financially weak, and Monaco was overly dependent on gambling and tourism. If things didn't change quickly, there was a real chance of bankruptcy. So Rainier began by regaining control of the SBM, and he worked to reduce Monaco's reliance on casinos. He basically worked to diversify Monaco's economy, and in 1953 a Greek millionaire would do exactly that. Aristotle Onassis entered the scene. He was a self-made Greek millionaire, and like pretty much anyone, he didn't like paying taxes, and that's how Monaco caught his attention. He decided to move the headquarters of his oil shipping company to Monte Carlo, but the only office available belonged to the SBM. The SBM, however, did not consider an oil company a good fit for the town, so Onassis was denied the office space. But he didn't take no as an answer, so through the various companies that he owned, he started buying up the shares of SBM until he became a major stakeholder. So he basically owned Monte Carlo. It reportedly cost him around $1 million, or over 12 millions today. But in the end, he got his office. He also fired the entire board of directors without even attending the meeting. Now that he owned a town that wasn't making him any money, Onassis decided to revive Monte Carlo. To do so, he looked at Las Vegas. He sent a few croupiers to learn new games. He relaxed the dressing code to attract a wider clientele, and he modernized the casinos. But Onassis didn't stop there. His goal was basically to rebrand Monte Carlo into a luxurious and modern destination. He began constructions of the most modern thermal baths, which included an Olympic swimming pool. He announced a helicopter shuttle linking Nice Airport and Monte Carlo, and he relaunched the theater season. Monte Carlo was entering a new era. Tourism was slowly coming back, and with the post-war economic boom, Monaco was looking very attractive to all those wealthy businessmen who didn't want to pay taxes. That's when a new shift happened. Many of the buildings were turned into apartments that were strictly for sale. Then a 7% sale tax was introduced, so every time a property changed owners, the government would profit. So in the end, there was only one more issue left to sort out. An agreement with France stated that if Monaco had no direct bloodline successors, it would become French territory. And at the time, Rainier was single. And this is where rumors have it that Onassis took again matters into his own hands, suggesting that Rainier should marry a Hollywood star. Hollywood at the time was still in its golden age, and a wedding between a royal and a Hollywood star would obviously capture global attention. While some say that at the beginning Marilyn Monroe was considered, eventually the choice fell on Grace Kelly because she was a much safer choice. Rainier and Grace first met briefly in 1955. She then returned to the US, and the two kept exchanging letters. After months, there was a second encounter which supposedly cemented their love. In 1956, after the Kelly family paid to the monarchy a dowry of $2 million, the royal wedding finally took place, and it made history. It is said that 30 million people tuned in to watch it, and it was described as the wedding of the century. Possibly because nothing like that has ever happened before. Not only a prince was marrying a Hollywood star, but it was also televised so anyone could watch it. The single event not only solved the succession problem, but it turned out to be the marketing campaign that Monaco desperately needed.